This year was not good for films. It was hard for me to put together the list for this video because it was a struggle to think of enough good movies for the best list, and also a struggle to narrow down 5 bad movies for the worst list. Still, I managed to complete my top 5 best and worst list for this year, so let's get into it. Sometimes a movie is so bad that it ends up kind of being entertaining, but that's only half true for Madam Web. I won't lie and say Madam Web wasn't fun to write a review for, which is why it's only at number 5. But that being said, Madam Web is a movie composed of complete nonsense. If you still had faith in the Sonyverse after Morbius, then this movie took all the remaining faith you had, wadded it up in a ball, and tossed it out the window. It's a movie consisting of poor storytelling and oddly stilted acting, as well as bizarre product placement. But thankfully, this, along with Kraven the Hunter, have sealed the fate of the Sonyverse, and hopefully will provide an example to Sony of what not to do when making a comic book movie. There was one movie this year that had me smiling from beginning to end, and for that, I believe Godzilla x Kong deserves a spot in the top 5. It's not an amazing movie, and it does have certain sections that drag, which leads to it only ranking 5th place, but this was definitely the movie that I had the most fun with this year. Leave it to modern Hollywood to make me disappointed in a movie that I wasn't particularly excited for in the first place. I thought that Joker Folie à Deux was going to be released, be a serviceable but ultimately pointless sequel, and then get brushed aside for the next latest release. I could never have imagined it landing on my bottom 5 list, and yet, here we are. Joker 2 is a movie that feels like it hates the audience of the first movie and decides to completely destroy everything that came before it, with pointless musical elements and a story that drags on for far too long without saying anything. It's a real shame that this has to be on this list, but it looks like that's just the way things turned out. There are only a few times franchises have pulled me back after releasing a horrible entry, and after Rise of the Beast, I thought I had just grown out of my love for the Transformers, but luckily, Transformers 1 was there to prove me wrong. A brand new origin for a long-time favorite franchise of mine that reignited that creative spark with an emotional story, fun action, great performances, and so-so comedy. This film is undeniably flawed, which is why it's only at the 4th spot, but where it lacks in comedy, it greatly makes up for with many of its other aspects. The Crow remake sacrifices everything that made the original so unique, and instead created a slower and more stilted version that innovates in all the wrong places. The action is more gory than the original, but it lacks the sense of flow and excitement that worked so well, which makes all the fights seem sloppier. It also pointlessly stretches sections from the '94 film to pad out its runtime, and features poor visuals and special effects. If you're interested in The Crow, then I would recommend just watching the 1994 film instead of this mess. This next movie easily could have just been a forgettable and pointless sequel made to capitalize on a franchise with no clear next step. But fortunately, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes ended up pushing the franchise in a new direction while also offering an exciting prospect of what could come next. The characters were far more interesting than I originally thought they were going to be, and the story kept me engaged for the entire duration. Last year, I was extremely confident in the future of video game adaptations, but all of my confidence was pretty much lost thanks to this year's selection, and by far the worst of these was Borderlands. A movie with dull action, visuals, acting, and story, as well as baffling casting decisions that made this bad for general moviegoers and even worse for fans of the games. I've never been someone who falls asleep during a film, but I got dangerously close while watching this. I have a little hope that video game adaptations will be better next year, but looking at the Minecraft movie trailer, it's only a little hope. Yeah, this is going to be the big one that's going to be on everyone's list, but for good reason. Dune Part 2 is an insanely impressive film, with amazing visuals, wonderful performances, and heart-pounding moments that made it a really memorable experience. For a while there, I considered making this my favorite movie of the year, but ultimately something else ended up beating it out. I did a lot of thinking of what my least favorite movie of this year was, and I ended up coming to the conclusion that the worst film I saw this year was the one that was so incredibly awful that it caused me to make a video talking about how much I didn't like it, which is now, over the course of a year, grown into something far bigger than I could have ever imagined. Argylle is the worst movie of 2024, with its insulting storyline, waste of talent, horrendous visuals, and some of the stupidest ideas I've ever seen put to screen. So thank you, Argylle. Thank you for being so incredibly putrid. When looking back at the movies I watched in 2024, it was really up in the air what was going to be my favorite film. But there was only one thing I watched that had a deep emotional impact on me, and that's how I knew it was going to be number one. The Wild Robot is DreamWorks performing at their absolute best, with a heartfelt and touching story backed up by stunning visuals, a fantastic score, and outstanding performances. I said before that it feels like DreamWorks is undergoing some sort of change in terms of how they make movies, and considering next year we're getting Dogman and Bad Guys 2, I can't wait to see what DreamWorks has planned for their future animated projects. That's all I got for now. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends, and hit that bell icon to be notified for whenever I make a new video. The next review should be the top and bottom 5 shows of 2024. So if you're interested in that, or interested in supporting the channel more, then turn on notifications and check out my other videos. Okay, that's it. Bye.